All right. Welcome back to the show, folks. Glad that you decided to hang out with me for a few minutes this evening. I'm going to have a little bit shorter show tonight, just a few topics that we're going to talk about. I'd like to encourage you to tag some friends or share this live feed out into whatever Facebook fishing groups you may be in or whatever social media platform you want to be. We are streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do, and I don't really have this on my list of topics, but I think we're due to give Nick LeBrun, our local professional angler, one of them, a good shout out because he just, let's get this pulled up here. Let me make it a little bit larger, but he just won one of the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit events on Gunnersville and won it with a pretty good weight on the final day Sunday. I think he had over 20 pounds, maybe 22 pounds. But anyway, so if you know Nick, just shoot him a text or whatever. If you see him around town or on the water, give him congratulations. He's had pretty good last 12 months. Let's see, I think he's placed second in 2 of the Bassmaster Opens, won one of the Opens, and now has won this Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit event. So Nick's doing a good job. He also represents Christ really well. As a matter of fact, when he got up on stage, he gave all glory to God in that. And so he is not ashamed to give the thanks where the thanks is due. But anyway, so if you see Nick around, let him know. He's a really nice guy, good guy, and an outstanding fisherman. All right, so also, if you have any comments, make sure and just go ahead and type them in. I try to monitor those in real time, so if you got any questions, let me know and I'll try to address them. So the next thing that we want to talk about is Ray Scott. Now, if you're involved in tournament bass fishing, unless you're, maybe a teenager, you'll know who Ray Scott is. Ray Scott is arguably the guy that put bass fishing and tournament bass fishing as a sport on the map back in the 60s. If I remember correctly, the first tournament was in 67. I think it was on Beaver Lake. And if I remember right, I think Stan Sloan won that one. But anyway, so Ray did pass away a few days ago. And I think he was like 88 years old and had some health issues maybe in the last couple of years. But he started the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, started the Bassmaster Magazine, then along with with Bob Cobb, started the Bassmaster TV show. Which was just a staple of bass fishing, especially back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, it's one of the things that I grew up watching, was, waiting for that TV show to come on. And, for the time, if you go back and look at some of those older episodes now, you think, man, that's really, really old school. But for the time, the graphics that they used and having on-the-water coverage and all that was really a big deal because it was a lot more expensive back then and a lot more effort to produce quality video than it is these days. These days, you can produce really good video with a phone that you have in your pocket if you know what you're doing. So again, condolences to all of Ray's family and his friends. His legacy will live on pretty much forever as long as we have bass fishing. Really can't say enough. Let me flip over here for a second, and we will take a look at the Bassmaster page here. And you can see there's a picture of Ray Scott with Johnny Morris. As a matter of fact, Johnny Morris has credited Ray with, helping get Bass Pro Shops off the ground. Again, you can just go down through here. A lot of folks don't realize how much Ray had to do with what we take for granted now in tournament fishing. Aerated live wells. Don't kill your catch, what we now call catch and release. He was the driving force behind that and the Bass Angler Sportsman Society. Matter of fact, kill switches. He was one of the first folks to really push and promote kill switches and made them mandatory in all tournaments. And, we take the kill switches for granted these days. So anyway, if you don't really know who Ray Scott is, you can just Google Ray Scott or Google Bassmaster Ray Scott, and there's just a wealth of information out there. I've got a video I'm going to cue up here. This is Ray Scott and Bob Cobb. I believe this was back in the maybe it was the mid-2000s, maybe it was earlier than that, might have been back in the 1990s. But anyway, it's about a 2-minute video the Bassmaster put out with Ray Scott and Bob Cobb, and they're talking about the influence of tournament fishing. So let's watch that here for a minute or two.
Dream that a lot of people called you Crazy Ray Scott.
That's right.
How does it feel to be here?
It feels good to know I'm not crazy, and the fact that these 20 years have been tremendously successful as far as building the image of bass fishing from really the bush leagues to the big time.
Did you really ever think 20 years ago at Las Vegas that would be this big with a Coliseum with 12 to 14, 15,000 people waiting for the world champion that you'll crown in 3 days?
Bob, I'd like to take credit for that vision, but I was, as you recall, you were right there with me. We were surviving week by week, and that first classic was quite a big step forward, but really the first step. And we knew that if we did the right thing and continued to promote fishing in a good, bright light, that it would grow. How big, we didn't know, but here we are 20 years later, and it's worked, and fishing is, bass fishing specifically, is at its highest point.
Tournaments. I know in the early days, people criticize tournaments, but really it's been the lifeblood of what's happened in bass fishing in the last 20 years.
I don't think it's any question. I think bass fishing tournaments, and a lot of people would have to stop to think and really realize this, but bass fishing tournaments, Bob, I think you would agree, and most people who've been around this industry would agree, that bass fishing tournaments have been the catalyst for the growth of this industry. Not just fishing boats and rods and reels, but I mean this enormous multi-billion-dollar industry, because it's created a showcase for the public to see heroes for the first time. The names that you see right here in this classic, all those names, popular names that are here, the winner of the tournament, and it's brought a lot of enthusiasm into the sport, and it's really been the catalyst, as I say, and really the fire, the fuel that has driven this industry forward, for the public's benefit as well as ours.
One last thought. Where are we going next? I mean, we're at the ultimate, we're at the peak. We've got a full house and people across the street watching it on closed circuit television.
Bob,
what can you do?
I'm not really worried about where we're going to go from here. We certainly only, if we don't move a step further along, we're doing a good job. But just like we were 20 years ago when you and I were riding to Atlanta, Georgia, and we had this brainstorm of a Bassmasters Classic, we weren't really worried about year 2 or 3. We knew that it would happen. And year 21 will be here in just about 12 months, and I'm sure, like always, we will have progressed and made a much more spectacle of this event, the Bassmaster Classic.
Well, let's hope so.
You bet you all the best.
Shake your hand again, buddy.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to be on the ride, and let's have a great 20th anniversary.
It will be. Thank you, Bob.
Right.
So, interesting fun fact there. The first tournament I ever fished was in 1984. Let's see, yeah, I was a freshman in high school, and I may have told the story before, but probably not on the show, but back then the News Star World newspaper out of Monroe used to put on a high school tournament. No adults in the boat, just high school kids. And the first one I fished was out of my grandfather's Glastron Bojack, stick steering, like you saw some of those boats there from the front. And, you know, it's amazing how far we've evolved. That video is actually from 1990, so just think of the time from then to now and how far we've come. But honestly, a lot of it's still the same. Got 5 fish limits, you know, must weigh your fish in alive or you get penalized, must have your kill switch on. So a lot of those foundations that Ray Scott and all the people around him originally, a lot of those things that they put into place back then carry forward, and I'm sure will continue on throughout tournaments. All right, so that's Ray Scott. Let's move on, and we're going to get kind of straight into talking about some baits and a couple of fishing techniques tonight. So I'm going to talk about the Angry Virg, and I'm going to roll a little bit of footage. I had never edited and put this video out, so I planned the full video, so I plan to do that in the next couple of days. But we're going to get a little quick preview of catching some fish on the Angry Virg on Caddo Lake. So let me kind of set this up. This was shallow water. Water's a little stained, and most of you know that I like to throw a frog a lot, but there are times when I like to switch it up. I like to throw a buzzbait, I like to throw a spinnerbait, wobblehead, I even throw a crankbait some and all that. But there are a lot of cases where when the water conditions are right, you know, as much as I love the frog, the buzzbait style baits will sometimes outperform the frog, and one of those times is when the water is a little bit stained. Good evening, good to see you there, Mr. Gallman. All right, so I'm going to roll this footage. Let me set this up. I've been fishing this stretch of bank about 50 yards or so. And you'll see right as I make this first cast, you're going to see what happens. And then I start talking, I believe, in this one about the Angry Virg. So here we go.
Oh, wow. I don't know how that fish missed it. And of course, my next cast, I'll throw right back into the tree. Alright, let's deal with our buzzbait.
So this is the Angry Virg right here.
So,
but I'm going to show you a little secret about it here.
And I like the blade to actually be hitting the head. So I take it and I bend it over to the one side and then about the same over to the other side. That should keep it centered and keep that blade down close.
All right, so let me move on. Let's move on to the next video clip. So you'll see me catch a fish here in just a second. I want you to notice what side of the tree. I'm constantly throwing to the right side of the tree in this. So here we go. Notice the water's a little stained. So again, notice I threw to the right side of that tree because the Virg tends to run to the left as you're facing forward because of the torque of the blade. And that's actually perfect because it allows you to get that bait
right there,
right in there to the tree.
There he is. Ooh, one hook. Well, let's do it.
And I'm going to show you a close-up of the bait here shortly. So
okay. So that just goes to show you, folks, when you see movement or see a fish chasing something, throw up in there. Boy, barely.
Notice that bait's got frog hooks. And that's another important key that we'll talk about here in a minute.
Good fish. He's about 17 3/4. He might touch 18. Let's check and see. Be close. It's kind of long and skinny. Oh, yeah. Yep. So that's 2 overs today. So it's 18 and a half inch fish. Let's get us another quick pick.
And a lot of you have asked how I take my pictures in the boat solo. And so I always like to set a timer on it. That way I can hit the button, step back, get in position, take a cool pic. And make sure that I focus the camera on me or on the fish.
Timer. Alright. Kind of skinny, but that's alright. Long fish.
Okay, so that's the Angry Virg that I was throwing there. So I want to show you what the Angry Virg looks like up close. So let me see if I can make this work. Let me flip over here to my desk camera here. So this is the Angry Virg. Of course, I've got, you know, a black one on a black background there, so it's a little tough to see, but the gold blades stand out nice. And notice that it's a real short profile bait. And I like that because when the fish come up, if they're going to come up and hit at the blade, then they're most likely going to get the hooks. And notice that it does use double frog hooks. And again, I'm a pretty good fan of these. Now, a couple of things about it. One, having the double frog hooks, and it's on a swivel here. All right, so as you can see, the hooks swivel back and forth. Now, the upside to that is it gives a lot of motion when the fish is thrashing his head, and it makes it a little more difficult, I think, in most cases for them to throw those hooks. But the downside is when you throw it next to a tree, you have to be careful because, honestly, about half the time, if you bump a tree with the Angry Virg, it's probably going to get hung if there's a little bit of bark on the tree. So just go into it knowing that. But this thing produces a lot of fish. And like I said in the video, and I'll show it again here in a second, This one I hadn't thrown yet, but I like to take that and tweak it down. I like the blade literally beating the paint off the head because it gives it a little different noise, a little different action to it. Now, that's the Angry Virg. Let's see. Let me show you the other one because they make one in a longer shaft here. All right. And so this is basically same concept. But it's got the frog hooks, but it's got the longer shank or well, I guess really that's called it's called the shaft. Anyway, but it's got a longer distance here. Now, and there are some cases where if they're going to come up and they're short striking the bait, in other words, they're hitting behind the blades and all that, this can be productive because they're going to be hitting back here, most likely, and catching those hooks. But notice it's got the same style frog hooks. All right, you can see them right there, and they do swivel, okay? And again, it's something different. It's got a different sound, a little different action, and I think that's one of the keys that lets it produce fish around here over traditional buzz baits because I just hadn't seen and heard this quite as much. And so again, this is the Angry Virg. This is the one I like. Notice it's a lot smaller, a lot more compact bait. Doesn't catch wind quite as bad if you got a little breeze going and all that. Now, I'm going to bring up the video again, and I'm going to show you in the boat and talk about how I tweak the blades again. So let's take a look at that. Let me show you a close-up here. So this is the deal right here. This is the Angry Virg. It's got kind of a rounded head, helps it get up on top of the water. You can see right there, hopefully, I've had the blade bumping that head. It's actually scraped a lot of the lead off, and we have us a pair of frog hooks, and I'm just slow rolling it past these trees, and if I see a fish move, I throw to it. Okay, so the key there was, let me back up and show you again. All right, is taking those blades and tweaking them down. I really like the edge of that blade hitting the head and chipping the paint off. After I get through using these, they'll hardly have any paint left on the head. And again, it just gives it a little bit of a different action. Now, so it's a great bait. You can get them over on the Funkbusters website. Let me flip over there. All right, this is the arrowhead style. As a matter of fact, I've got one of these here on the desk. I'll show you here in a second. So they've got that one. That's got a really good planing head. It helps keep it up on the top of the water. But if you also go over here, you'll see the Angry Virg buzzbait. And again, this one is my favorite. I usually throw a 3 ounce, just kind of my preference. And that's it right there. If you go over here, you'll also see, again, that's on funkbusterbaits.com. You'll see the Virg Buzz, and that's the longer shaft one that I was showing you. Again, same basic concept with the frog hooks on it. Now, there is one little trick that I want to show you. So let me flip back over here to my desk camera. All right, so one downside is, if you notice on this one right here, there's no, well, if I can get it there, there's no hooks on this bait. All right. And the reason is sometimes when you get a big fish on, the big fish will have a tendency to separate these hooks slightly, and it doesn't take much. And if they get to thrashing around just right, these hooks will actually slide right off, and you got to be careful with it. So one of the first things that I do when I'm fishing these, when I pull them out of the package, is I take me a couple of wraps of braid, little length of braid, and I just put it up in there in between those hooks, and you can see it right there at the end of my finger. Well, if I can get this position just right. All right, I've got a little bit of braid on there, and I put just a drop of super glue or fishing glue, you know, or whatever you want to use, Gorilla Glue, whatever. Put just a drop on there, and what that does, it just kind of holds those hooks together, and it keeps the hook, the bait, from being able to slide down those hooks. So that's a little trick to that bait. But one thing about Paul and them is they build great baits. Their customer service is second to none, and if you need some customizing, they will do it. they don't really keep baits on the shelves, although a lot of the tackle stores around, I know Bayou Outdoor Super Center or Bayou Outdoor Power Sports keeps them in stock. Let's see where else. Buzzard Bay keeps them in stock, and several other places. So you can get them locally, but you can also call and order them. And, the price point's pretty good. And if you need something customized, they are willing to do that. So that's the Angry Virg buzzbait. So, hey, usually I'm talking about a frog, but this week we're talking about a buzzbait. Now, I've also got, this is an old lunker lure here that I need to put some skirts on. I had several of them that the skirts, the rubber on the skirts got messed up, and so I bought me a couple of bags of skirts. So this is a traditional lunker lure style, and I want to compare that to the Virg style buzzbait. And you can see that you've got a little more distance, all right, from the bend down. Of course, this one's got a little bigger blade on it, all right. And again, these frog style hooks. Now, when you set the hook on these, you got to drive the hook home pretty good, like you do with a frog, all right, because these are fairly big diameter hooks. They're frog hooks, all right. But again, I love having the double hooks on those, especially on the bigger fish. I just I have so much confidence in throwing a frog that throwing these hooks is, a bait with these hooks is kind of a natural deal to me. And I like that ability for it to swivel when they're back there thrashing around, because they can't get quite as much leverage against the head of this bait, all right, where they're throwing the weight around like they can here. When the fish is thrashing with a regular buzz bait and he's able to move that head around, he's got pretty good leverage on it, all right, to be able to get that hook out. But with the Angry Virg, because of the way that it's set up here, he doesn't have as much leverage to be able to twist that hook out as he's fighting. All right, so anyway, that's the one tip of the day. And let me go ahead and get some comments up here. So Jeff Brown says, like that bug? Yes, sir. I throw it a lot and have caught a lot of fish off of it. So definitely one of my favorites. Steve Lee, of course, says, Ray Scott was good stuff. We need to go fishing. Yes, sir, we do, Mr. Steve. Need to head back over your direction before too long. And our good friend Dan Fulgrim says, can't tell how many times lost hooks off the old H&H spinnerbait or forgot to put them on out of the pack. That is correct, Dan. Man, I hadn't thrown an H&H in forever. That sounds like that might be a good idea to go grab me some of those and try throwing those a little bit. All right, so the other thing I want to talk about is, I don't have any video or pictures right now. You can go back and look on my Facebook page, but is the Whopper Plopper. So this is my black one, and I'm not super particular on the Whopper Plopper. I throw white, maybe bone colored, although, to me the difference between the white and the bone really isn't enough to matter in my opinion, because this is purely a reaction bait. And then I like throwing this black one with the white spots. Whether the white really matters that much or not, I don't know, but this is my favorite one right here. Matter of fact, you can kind of see right here where the end of my finger is. You can see those marks. Those are actually scuffs in the paint from catching some pretty darn good fish on this exact Whopper Plopper. I've got my white one tied on now. That's what I caught them on this weekend and last weekend, as a matter of fact. I couldn't get that many frog bites, but they were on the Whopper Plopper. I like throwing the 110 model. To me, I've got pretty good distance with it. Even in the wind, a little bit of ripple, it does great. You don't have to worry about backlashing that much or being as particular about it. The 110 to me is a perfect size. You'll catch little fish on it every now and then, but it tends to get more aggressive, larger fish on. And I like having the red eyes on it. Does that matter to the fish? I don't think they can see the eyes while it's in the water, but I like throwing anything with the red eyes. But the Whopper Plopper. Now, the Whopper Plopper is one of those baits that you either learn to love it or you just flat out hate it. One of the problems is it's coming through the water. You can see I've got it positioned right here. The hooks, of course, are dangling down, and it rides low in the water, okay? So, if this is the water level, it's riding, basically like that in the water. And so the challenge is, especially fishing Caddo and, Bistineau, most of the lakes around here, there's a lot of grass, and this thing will grab every piece of grass in the water. If you throw it by a tree, you don't want to try to bump the tree with the Whopper Plopper, because you're gonna get hung. It will grab everything in its path. But big fish, when they're on it, they're on it. And now, a couple of things. You want to try to keep the fish down. Try not to let them jump, because this is a heavy bait. And so when they're thrashing their head around, that means they've got a lot of weight that they can, that they're using as they're thrashing around, and it'll work those hooks out of there. So you will lose some fish on the Whopper Plopper, but it will absolutely draw big strikes. And you can draw fish way out. I've had it where I've seen fish moving and thrown 3 or 4 feet from them, and no problem at all. You'll see them wake over to this thing. So anyway, not an inexpensive bait, but the nice thing is it floats. So if you break off or something like that, you can usually get it back. I've had this one now for 2 or 3 years. So that is one good thing about it. It's expensive, but you tend to get them back. All right. Well, folks, we are, like I said, going to be kind of a short show tonight. It's 7:35, so only been talking about 35 minutes, but I did want to go ahead and do a Monday evening show. I'm trying to do these every Monday evening if possible. And I think I've got a guest lined up for next week. If I get that finalized, then I'll make sure and put up an event notice, to remind everybody about next week's show and who I'm going to have on. In the meantime, I'd encourage you, go to Facebook, look up the Outdoor News on Facebook. You can also go to YouTube, look it up one word on YouTube, or go to theoutdoor.news, no.com, and look it up there. Let's see. Dan says, how do you fish it? Steady retrieve. Yes, sir. And I like to slow roll it like I'm slow rolling a spinnerbait. I call it the gurgle bait because I want to hear the gurgle out there. And so I generally do a fairly slow, steady retrieve, but slow. Every now and then I might, twitch it a little bit or stop it. Most of the time it's a steady retrieve because this is a reaction style bait. I don't want them to have to study it very long. I want them to think about either leaving it alone or killing it. One of the two. Frog's a little different. I do a lot of twitch pausing and all that with the frog. And I'll actually take the frog and work it around a tree and let it sit there. And I've had fish, you let it sit there 15 seconds, 30 seconds. And as soon as you touch it, the frog will come up and get it. Seems to be different with the Whopper Plopper. This one, because of all the hardware on it, I just want a slow, steady retrieve. I want them chasing it and I want them to crush it and try to kill it. So, let's see. Dan says, what size hooks? I want to say these are, these are bigger than 3s. So they're fairly large size hooks. I had never checked to see what hook size these are. These look like probably, might be 4s. And the trouble is, and I think these are VMCs. I'm pretty sure they're VMCs. I know that they're round point and they're thick hooks as well, so it's pretty heavy. But anyway, so that's the Whopper Plopper. I do have some videos somewhere. I got plenty of pictures of catching them on the Whopper Plopper. And look, here's another trick before I sign off. Throw it in the middle of the day. So a quick little story is, when I first started fishing again back in 2019, I've been fishing cattle for a couple of months. It was just catching unders. 1 or 2 slot fish, but mostly unders. Hadn't caught any big fish on cattle yet. And it was like, I forget, August. Sweat pouring down. Couldn't hardly see through my glasses because all the sweat. And it was like noon, 1 o'clock. Called my best friend Mike Davis. And I was like, man, I'm fixing to give up on cattle. He's like, what's the matter? I said, I can't catch any overs. He said, get a Whopper Plopper. He said, you bought a Whopper Plopper, right? Yeah, I bought one of them. He said, get the Whopper Plopper and throw that Whopper Plopper right now in the middle of the day. Well, I thought he was slam crazy, but as it turns out, about 5 casts later, I caught one about 5.5. So the first fish I ever caught on a Whopper Plopper was, a decent fish. So anyway, give it a try. Throw it in the middle of the day, the heat of the day. When even if you don't see fish moving, it doesn't matter. They like this thing in the heat of the day. That's another secret to my frog fishing. I catch more fish on a frog and most other topwaters mid-morning through mid-afternoon than I do early or even late evening. I catch them, late evening too, but most of the fish that I catch on the frogs or the Whopper Plopper or the Angry Virg are going to be middle of the day to middle of the afternoon in the heat of the day when it's just absolutely miserable outside. So another little tip. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And like I said, I'm going to try to do this again every Monday. This is show number 6 so far. Try to do this every Monday. I'd ask that you share this out or tag some friends. Let them know if you would like to be a guest on the show or know somebody that needs to get the word out about something. Just hit me up on Facebook or whatever. I've got a dial-in system where you can either call in or come in with video from your phone or computer. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so I've enjoyed it. Again, let's see. John P. says, "Hey, Rex, I caught a 9.5 pound on a buzzbait." That's awesome, John. A 9.5 is nothing to sneeze at. Hello there, Mr. Boggs. Good to have you on the show this evening in the comments. Been watching some of your Facebook posts there as well. Good to see you again. So, all right. Anyway, so I'm actually going to sign off this time. Otherwise, I could sit here and talk all night. Glad y'all joined in. Let everybody know, and I will see y'all again next Monday. Oh, and I'll have a video coming out here pretty quick on the Angry Virg, the full video, including that fish that I caught. And anyway, hope everybody enjoys it. See y'all next week.